Great Lakes Airlines. It's always fun when you talk about Great Lakes because everybody thinks that we are the Great Lakes. Obviously, most of you that have been here before know that the name came from the Iowa Great Lakes, not necessarily indicative to the Denver hub where we fly. I was thinking on the way over this morning, 2 years ago, standing here before you, it was a little bit different story than 2 years later today. 2 years ago, we were somewhat standing here being the last guy standing in the essential air service market. We had seen actually 3 of our friendly competitors go out of business and left approximately 33 cities open in the EAS market. We inherited 22 of those cities, and over the last 2 years we actually added 7 additional aircraft. So we currently have 32 Beech 1900s, we have 6 Brazilias, and right now we have 31 of those in service and 5 of the Brazilias in service. So you can tell we don't have a lot of spare airplanes sitting around, something that's become problematic for us, so we're trying to figure that out. Since then, as of January of this year, we actually started exiting some of those 22 cities. If you looked at our route map, we were geographically spread out across the country, and some of the eastern cities we decided did not work operationally, or the airports themselves weren't working for us, meaning like the St. Louis hub. We saw American go from over 300 departures 2 years ago down to 32 departures or thereabouts in St. Louis, and so with the hub downsizing, our connectivity and the opportunities in places like St. Louis no longer worked for us. So we started exiting those as the 2-year contracts came up. We elected to not rebid those cities and turned them over to one of our other friendly competitors, Cape Air. I was hoping I was going to stand here today and tell you that I was making a big aircraft order, because that's always makes for good press. Dan Wolf suggested that I stand up here and the day the mergers are the soup du jour, so Dan suggested maybe I talk about how he and Great Lakes were going to merge together, but Dan left, so I don't think that's going to happen. But we are excited to still be the last guy standing. We're excited to say that profit is not a dirty word in the airline business. We tried to quit acting like a 501(c) nonprofit organization and actually make money in the airline business, and we've been successful at that for the last 2.5 years. We currently serve 41 EAS cities, so we are the largest essential air service provider in the country. We also serve a total of 59 cities in 15 states, so we're fairly spread out. This year in April, we actually expanded into Las Vegas, not for the obvious reasons we wanted to be in Las Vegas, but some of our West Coast cities that we serve, the contracts called for the Las Vegas hub. It was a very challenging airport to enter into, because if you're typically not coming into Las Vegas with a 757 and, as they say, lots of butts and seats, then they're not interested in airplanes flying in there. They don't necessarily want to be known as a hub airport. So we eventually worked our way into Las Vegas, and it's working well for us, and it's added some of the expansion. We're seeing traffic up and down all across the board, and some of our what I call the conservative farm belts, the Nebraska and Kansas markets, are somewhat flat on a year-over-year basis, and then we're seeing explosion in markets like North and South Dakota where there's oil drilling. We're actually seeing double-digit increases in traffic on a year-over-year basis, where we can't seem to add enough seats in those markets. So it's kind of a mixed bag, and it's not all bad news in our part of the world. We're somewhat isolated out in the Denver region or the Midwest region, so it's been extremely good for us. But with that said, I'll open it up for the Q&A. Catherine.
We've had quite an attack on the EAS service amongst the media. CNN had a big series, and USA Today had a big series. What is your comment on that? What don't they understand?
Catherine's question was, there's been a lot of attack on the EAS program through the national media. CNN and all runs lots of stories on EAS and the waste of government money. Our feeling on that is that the program is here. It seems to be solid. There's actually appropriations in the FAA reauthorization bill to up the funding from currently at the $110 million mark to roughly $200 million. The good news is that the congressmen and senators that help do the funding live in a lot of these rural communities, and so it's kind of a heartfelt thing for them to continue the program. What I like to talk about in the EAS program is it's not just the fluff, Catherine, for actually federal funding, but it's an economic development engine for these communities. A lot of times the airline service is the lifeblood of that particular community. It's the only way in and out of town, and so it's not just about air service, it's about the economic development of communities and supporting it. And I think Congress understands that, and that's why they support the program. The question was fleet type and what we're looking at in a going forward basis. Obviously, we also have the distinguished of being one of the largest Beech 1900 operators domestically. It's been a great airplane. It's right-sized for a lot of the essential air service markets that we serve. And then the Brasilia is a nice upgrade for the 30-seat markets, but because we have a small fleet, it is something that we are reviewing looking forward as to whether we do a fleet type in that particular category. My guess is that we will always have a significant number of Beech 1900s because it's something we know and something that works extremely well in our markets. When we look at a second fleet type, in addition to our current second fleet type, it gets challenging. A lot of that is based on where we're located, which is predominantly out of Denver, and the communities that we fly to are basically high and hot airports. They're anywhere from Denver almost being the lowest elevation at 5,200 feet to a lot of our airports go up to 6,000 and 7,000 foot elevations and somewhat limited runways. So that in itself makes it challenging from an aircraft fleet planning to try to determine where we go. The question is, are we having trouble finding good quality Beech 1900s? The short answer would be yes. While there were a lot of Beech 1900s parked, Raytheon as a corporation in Hawker Beach is elected to not continue to necessarily support the refurbishment in today's economic climate. So a lot of these airplanes that you find parked require a significant capital investment. And it then becomes challenging of who's on first and who puts the money in, especially when you're talking about essential air service contracts that are only 2 years long. You sit there and try to justify the capital investment on a 2-year project, and that too becomes very challenging, but it's something we are trying to work through, and it also ties into the previous question of maybe an additional fleet type to support. A lot of our markets that we serve today are, shouldn't say a lot, but at least there's a pocket of 10 or 12 of those markets that if we had a fleet type that would support it, we could upgrade that and then take those, call it the leftover 10 airplanes, and then recycle those into growth markets or whatever. So it kind of goes back to, I think we will always have our core group of the Beech 1900s, and then it's how do we support the growth with larger markets that support 30-seat equipment or better.